Nintendo has a pretty good track record of creating memorable consoles. Everyone knows the Game Boy, Nintendo 64, GameCube, and Wii, just to name a few. But occasionally, Nintendo makes some consoles that really make you question your own existence. Like the Nintendo Gateway, a weird DS hybrid that you could play only on airplanes and in some hotel rooms. What is this controller, Nintendo? What are you doing? But the console we're gonna talk about today was only released in Japan and went by the Satellaview. The Nintendo Satellaview. What an interesting piece of hardware. The Satellaview was released in Japan back in April 24th, 1995, and was an add-on to the Super Famicom, or the Super Nintendo. Now, this add-on was really special because it wasn't exactly a game console that you would put physical games in, but instead was a satellite modem that would essentially give your Super Famicom access to the internet. Oh man, if Nintendo can't get that right today, God knows what it must have been like in the 90s. So yeah, the Satellaview lets you view things from a satellite. Satellaview. Now this was an incredibly ambitious project at the time, but with this new confangled thing known as the internet, I guess everyone wanted a piece of that pie. Even Sega got in on it with their Sega channel. The Satellaview, or BSX as it's otherwise referred to as, cost about $150, dang! The Satellaview would allow you to download and play games that were broadcast via satellite for a certain amount of time. To make this possible, Nintendo partnered with Saint Giga, this Japanese satellite radio company thing. I don't really know. Anyway, you'd have to rent out a BS tuner from them, and no, it doesn't stand for what you think it does. These things apparently cost around $54 a month to rent, and you were tied to a 6-month contract. So doing some quick math here, that's $324 for the BS tuner, another $150 for the Satellaview itself, and another $250 on top of that for a Super Famicom at the time. That's like over $700 to play your Super Famicom online. So this better be worth it at this price. Now, despite not being a cartridge-based service, you still needed the BSX cartridge to overwrite data and stuff like that, to let your Super Nintendo take in internet. Look, I don't know how it works. You look at this chart and explain it to me! Anyway, starting up the Satellaview, you'll immediately be thrown into this Earthbound-like town. And you see that right there? That's you! This town acts as the main menu. This is where you'll download games, play them, and get updates and messages from Nintendo themselves. The name of this town is... what the hell? Sore wa name o nusumareta machi no monogatari. That's as close as I'm gonna get to nailing it. Which translates to... the story of the town whose name was stolen. What a name. So you'd go here to download games and wait for them to be broadcast. So let's check out some of these games and see what they were all about. First, we're gonna check out BS Zelda. And yes, that is hilarious. Now again, I must reiterate that these games were initially broadcasted to your Super Famicom, meaning you had to play them at the right times. So, for example, if the broadcast started at 4 p.m. and you couldn't play a game until 4:30, means that you'd be left behind. Now, why was this the case? Well, it's because these broadcasts added loads of awesome additions to the game, including a full-on orchestrated soundtrack and even narration, making the game feel incredibly grandiose. Sure, games nowadays are like that, but back in the 90s, playing Zelda with orchestrated music and a voiceover narrating the game like an epic fairy tale really would have put a big smile on kids' faces. And there is literally no way of recreating this. You can find and download the games online and put it on an emulator, but it won't have the music or narration, considering it was all done live. Only kids in Japan who were lucky enough to have this piece of technology got to truly experience it in its fullest form. BS Zelda is essentially a remake of the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, but with new upgrades and additions, the most obvious of course being the graphics. They're upgraded to beautiful 16-bit. However, you may also notice the character. That's not Link! And you'd be right, because you actually get to take control of your avatar character. Back in the town with the really long name, you got to choose either a male or female character. And in turn, a 16-bit version of you got to join the Zelda world. Now for BS Zelda, these broadcasts would only last an hour at a time. In that hour, it was your job to complete certain quests and missions, usually relating to finding pieces of the Triforce. Once the hour was up, you couldn't play anymore. It was pretty much like, tune in next week for another exciting edition of BS Zelda. Please don't laugh. It really did sound like such a fascinating experience. Again, you can download the full game today, but a lot of the charm and reason to play it live is gone and lost to time.
地面から顔を出して攻撃してくるゾーラの弾を防ぐことができる。
Another fun game that was released was Mario Battle Stadium, a fun 16-bit remake of another NES game, Excitebike, except now with Mario characters. Yeah, not much to this one really. It's just kind of charming seeing a 16-bit Excitebike with Mario. Then there's just the really weird stuff, like Kirby's Toy Box, a collection of Kirby minigames that could be found and played within Kirby Superstar. First, there's Kirby no Omo Chabako, or Kirby's Pachinko. Pachinko machines are a little more interesting in real life. You're just shooting balls and then leaving it to chance on where it lands. Pachinko is pretty popular in Japan, so I get why it's here. It's just not very fun. Like, at all. At least Kirby's cute as always. Then there's Kirby Baseball. I mean, it's a little better, I guess. You take control of this floating bat and need to swing it at the right time to hit Kirby! It's definitely not a polished game. Sometimes you hit Kirby and he just doesn't go anywhere. And other times the physics just feel wacky. But again, we're hitting Kirby with a baseball bat! I don't advocate that! Then there's Kirby Guru Guru Ball, and I don't even know what the hell this is all about. But hey, I did it. There was also the BS Super Mario Bros. USA Challenge. It was just Super Mario Bros. 2, or as it was known in Japan, Super Mario Bros. USA. Just like with every other Satellaview experience, the game was focused on challenges and events. For example, beating Birdo as fast as you can while also collecting cherries, coins, and mushrooms. There's also golden Mario statues spread throughout the stage in more difficult to reach places that you need to collect. You may notice these fun faces that would pop up in the corner of the screen to talk to you. They'd give you some insight on your mission while also just having some fun Mario banter. I gotta say, that's really cute. Just playing Mario normally and then having Toad pop up to say something. Overall, the Satellaview was a really interesting and fascinating piece of video game history. Obviously, I can't give any first-hand impressions considering I didn't live in Japan as a kid, but checking it out years after it was done still impresses me so much. Like, there really hasn't been anything like that since the Satellaview. Yeah, games nowadays have events that only last a certain amount of time, but a full-on broadcast where everyone has to play at the same time and experience live voiceover, that's just something really special. The Satellaview was a pretty big hit at the time, having over 100,000 people signed up for the service at its peak. The Satellaview online service lasted 5 years, which is longer than I would have guessed, between 1995 and 2000. Nintendo and Saint Giga didn't really have a super solid plan to continue online gaming for the future, mainly because the technology just wasn't there yet. And just like the Satellaview, many people thought that the console and its games would be lost forever. But that clearly wasn't the case. The Satellaview should be looked upon fondly as another one of Nintendo's ambitious projects. So thank you, Satellaview. And thank you, satellite people!